bathroom, and I had a watchwoman. You know, God put certain people in your path to keep you on track. And I was just doing something what I thought was normal. I looked around. She said I was standing watch because I wanted to make sure nobody came in since you're in the men's bathroom. I'm like, oh, well. I kept saying, why is there a urinal in here? But, you know, in all sincerity, you know how in most of the meetings I go to nationally, there's such a diverse population of people that it's more difficult for hotels and things to have men's and women labeled bathrooms. So a lot of them have transformed into what they call unisex or whatever. And so men or women could use it. And so I just saw bathroom. That's all I cared about. But one other note I want to make, and you know how a lot of times like you're doing it, you're in the shower, and a thought will come to you, whatever. So while I was in the men's bathroom, something came to me. So I'm looking something up because I think it's appropriate right now in this space. I did not plan to pull it up, but I'm going to pull it up because the Spirit hit me. There's a passage. Well, first, let me just say that I'm grateful to be here today. Pastor Baker was on a webinar that was facilitated by Mr. Willie Bryant. Mr. Bryant is working with us to further a initiative that has been going on since the beginning of COVID. At the time I got involved, I was serving as CEO of the South Carolina HIV Council. We were the largest provider of non-medical services for HIV testing, testing for sexually transmitted infections, mobile unit. Our whole sole purpose was prevention. We made a very difficult decision in September of last year after 27 years of service, to close our doors. I will say that, you know, all things have a season, and sometimes God puts you in a space where you have to make decisions, or he'll just flat out tell you what you're going to do. And you can either cooperate or learn the hard way. So I've learned in my 67 years of life, since I'm old and stuff, to follow instruction, because I don't like to suffer pain, especially when I can avoid it. And so I'm grateful to be here this morning, and I'm grateful that you didn't see it robbery to come out. My goal is not to keep you long. Part of what I spoke to your pastor about was, where are we now? Where are we as a community as it relates to, just in general, where are we with our health status? I do have a particular interest to make sure you have updates on COVID, because despite how people are behaving, it has not gone anywhere, and it is still here. You also have young people in your family who are resistant, who are refusing to take actions. You have grandchildren. I have 2 grandchildren, and I have 2 great-grandchildren. And so I'm just as concerned about myself, but I'm also concerned about them, because I don't want them giving me nothing. So let me be frank. And so that's their parents' responsibility. So I deal with their parents, and my husband and I set limits to what we're going to do and what we're not going to do. So part of this, with this brief time that we have together, I really hope it's more of like a family conversation versus me talking at you. My husband of 28 years said that his granddaddy used to sit down and say, "I'm talking at you." And I said, "Oh, well, yeah, I hear you, but I would rather talk with you, where I can provide maybe some information that you're not aware of or information that you already know, and I can reinforce or clarify some things." Part of our goal with what is the HIV Clinical Trials Network, part of our job is to, or mission rather, it's really not a job because it's just something we love to do, is more about making sure that when we make decisions about our health, we do it with science-based information and not misinformation or disinformation. So the difference between the two is misinformation is when I tell you something, and one of the things we don't always do is say, "Okay, tell me what you think I said." That's an important clarifier for anyone, because I can talk with you, but I need to know you understood exactly what I said. So if you could please give me back what you think I said, then I have an opportunity to say, "No, that's not what I meant," or "No, that's not right," or "That's right, but let me add this to what I'm trying to say." That's different than disinformation. You hear a lot of that. I'll call it simply, it's a lie, where somebody made it up or they created it trying to change your belief, your attitude, or they're making you think that something is true that's not true. And you believe it, and then you pass it from person to person to person. And so you really need to know how to decipher between what is something you misunderstood and need more information, or something that's a flat-out lie that you might need to address. Okay, so at any rate, outside of Proverbs, the 2nd chapter, where it tells us about seeking knowledge as if it were silver, how I interpreted that was when I lost my pocketbook at the job one day, and I was freaking out because I had just got paid. It wasn't Friday night, but I had just got paid, and I had something I need to handle, and I had it in my purse. And so obviously losing that had me escalating. And I was going back and forth, and I went to the car, and I went in my office, and I looked here, and I looked there, and I went through all these changes. And after about 20 minutes of going through these antics, I found the purse in the car, back in like a dark recessed place. So it was there all the time, but I missed it. And a lot of times we don't dig deeper to get information. We look one time and we say, "Oh, that's it," or we hear something and we say, "Oh, that's it." But it's important, especially for those of us or communities of color, that we have to ask questions. Whether it's a question to our physician. We are not in a space as a Black community to sit in front of a medical provider and be passive in our care. Why? Because a lot of the things that we know spiritually or we feel are overlooked. And we say something's not right or something's wrong. And a clinician can easily discount what it is you're saying. And so our whole mentality in keeping our health has to do with seeking knowledge as if it were silver, seeking it with a sense of desperation, asking questions because you need to know answers, not, "Oh, well, I'm the doctor, I'm telling you what, blah, blah." But you know something's not right. And so that's my first message, that I'll give you some information, but you should always question it. Just because I'm whatever or whoever doesn't mean you don't have the right to question. The second is in the book of Sirach, Sirah, chapter 38. It speaks very clearly to, it gives us some instruction. It's like part of the books of Ecclesiastes that we know are the books of wisdom. And so I just want to read you a quick passage before I begin. It says, And this is a scripture I typically bring out when I meet people who are resistant to information. It says, make friends with the doctor, for he or she, I'm just adding that in, is essential to you. God has also established them in his profession. From God, the doctor has wisdom, and from the king, he receives sustenance. Knowledge makes the doctor distinguished and gives access to those in authority. God makes the earth yield healing herbs, which prudent people should not neglect, meaning he makes things of the earth. So some people will rely, like I've been to Africa, many times some of the people that live there rely on traditional medicine or traditional healers. But what they have found out with the AIDS epidemic, as rampant as it has been and is, that they have to merge their traditional health with Western medicine. So we can use the innovations of Western medicine coupled with what we know can work in traditional medicine, because all y'all grandmamas, somebody had some remedy they used to use, and it worked. So you can't just throw it out the window and say, oh, it's not Western medicine, because grandmamas knew that if you, I don't know whether it's cod liver oil or they mixed up a concoction of some sort, said drink it and you hated it, but you drank it and you felt better. So it's all about that. So it says that God makes the earth yield healing herbs, which the prudent should not neglect. Was not the water sweetened by a twig so that all might learn his power? So he endures people with knowledge to glory in his mighty works, through which the doctor eases pain and the druggist prepares his medicine. When we think about people that don't want to take their meds, don't want to take their hypertension medicine, won't take their insulin shot. Does that make sense what I'm saying? He tells us to follow the instructions of the doctor because God put him here to do his work. Thus, God's work continues without cease and its efficacy on surface of the earth. So, my son, when you are ill, do not delay. Young folks say, handle it. Get it done. Oh, I'm going to watch it for a minute. Let me see how it play out. No. Get to the doctor. Find out what it is. It says, but pray to God, for it is he who heals. Flee wickedness and purify your hands. Cleanse your heart of every sin. Offer up sweet-smelling obligations and memorial, a generous offering according to your means. And then give the doctor his place. Lest he leave you, you need him. For there are times when recovery is in his hands. Does that make sense? So we can't keep saying, this is, so today, what I want to do is briefly just give you an update on a couple of things. Feel free to ask questions, ask clarity points. I can go. I'm a control freak. I can't control my slides, so I'm just telling you, this is hard for me. We could go. This is just some folks that I've been collaborating with. I want to give tribute to Fred Hutch Cancer Research Center. They're funded through NIH. That's who allows me to do this kind of work. Black Health is out of New York. When we had no means to really get out in community around COVID, they directed funding through the Christian Action Council. Pastor Regina Moore, who's over I think she's the first African-American woman to sit over the South Carolina Christian Action Council. We directed funds through her organization so that we could do community outreach, go out, do you know what? I just thought I have COVID kits in my car, testing kits that I need to bring in here so you can get some before you go, because you never know when you're going to need it. And all these other groups up here, the HIV Vaccine Clinical Trials Network is who I represent today. I'll go next slide. Oh, and that Project Tech, I work with Trinity Baptist Church too. They do a lot of some of the same things you're doing today. And so we've done a couple of partnerships and vaccines, and I got my first flu shot. So let me just admit, I was one of them. I never had a flu shot till last year. I already had mine this year because COVID scared the crap out of me, and I knew I was getting anything they offered. And even up to this date, I said, I don't care if I glow in the dark. I'm getting all my boosters. But at any rate, so when you look at that picture up there on the screen, what do you see? Are you sure? Depends on how you look at it. Well, what do you see when you, depends on how you look at it. So what that really is a woman. And she's painted like a bird, but you can see her hand coming back behind her head and that thigh. And if the shadows were different, you would see her breast, and they were all painted. The reason why I'm showing you this, and I show it frequently, is that it's important that you know that sometimes what you see is not always what you see. And when we walk into spaces of uncertainty, it helps us more when we go into it, at least with the attitude of, I'm open and I'm ready to learn, because what I think is happening might not really be happening, or what I think this situation is about may have a backdrop to it that I'm unaware of, and I'm open to change. Next slide. So the other thing I need to talk about is the elephant in the room, and we can go to the next slide. The elephant in the room is that we live in South Carolina. I'm not from South Carolina, but my roots are in South Carolina. My grandfather was born in Charleston, but I didn't know that till I was a grown woman because my parents divorced very early. My dad raised me and my sisters from the ages of 8, 10, and 2. And he was, a single man with 3 girls, so you can imagine every woman in town wanted to be our next mama. We were like, we don't need no mama. What do you want us to do? Cook, clean? So all of us cook, clean. Our whole objective was, let's keep this straight so we don't have to deal with this again, because we know what the last time was about. That was a sidebar. But the elephant in the room, would you go to the next slide? That we're in a state where slaves came in. And for those of us that had fortunate enough to go to Africa, to go to Ghana in particular, to see how we were transported from there to here, where Charleston was a major space in which we entered into this country. The reality is that we live in southern states that haven't expanded Medicaid. The whole thing around expanding Medicaid is camouflaged. Remember the parrot? It's camouflaged as an issue of economic survival, when in fact, we really need to question about value. What is the value of human life? What is the value to ensure that all people, regardless of your economic status, have some access to health care? Especially when you get up every day and work to a job, but your employer doesn't provide you with health care. So when you get sick, when you need your teeth looked at or whatever, where do you go when you have no health care? I was so glad to get 65 and get on Medicare. I waited till 67. I said, I'm getting every job I could get. And I do a tap dance every time I go to the doctor, and they don't say, give me a copay. Okay, I put in my time. But for all the folks that haven't reached that age, my grandsons, one in particular, I'm really concerned about their access to health care. I know it's life and death. And the fact that we're in a state that does not expand Medicaid like most southern states, they've had a traditional history of slavery and a devaluation of life, We're constantly struggling against things that appear to be one thing, but potentially are really something else. I don't like saying it. We're in 2023 almost, and we're still struggling with some of the same challenges of accessing help that we were back in your grandmama's day and your grandmama's mama's day. How can that be? And so when we talk about access to health care, Francis Marion Sims, we have buildings named after him at the Capitol. He's known as the father of gynecology. He created all the apparatus so that women could have reproductive health, but he experimented with black women with no anesthesia. On some of the slaves, it is documented that he did numerous operations on them with no anesthesia to prove his medical side. So when we, as current women, go get our gynecology exams or whatever, we can't even imagine what all of the sisters, all the pain they went through to get us so we could walk in and be pain-free. Does that make sense? So our heritage is in everything. And so the Tuskegee studies, I am a Tuskegee grad. My undergrad was from Tuskegee. Do you know that in 4 years, from 1973 to 1977, as a student there, they never talked about the Tuskegee study? I never sat in one class, and they talked about it. I found out about Tuskegee really for real when I went in my public health doctoral program. What does that speak to? It speaks to stigma. It speaks to not talking about things. And we black folks have to start talking about things that make us uncomfortable, because we're either going to live or die based on our willingness to confront issues and to talk in our families when it's uncomfortable. Next slide. So all those black men on the left, to reinforce stigma mindsets, all of those black men died of COVID. All of them were those men, the one in the middle, the young brother in the middle down at the bottom with the white suit, he was from South Carolina. These men were featured in a national article. That's where I got their photos. All of them, most of them, except one, were married or with a partner. All of them had children. So part of what this conversation is about, especially for black men, is that we've lost a whole lot of black men to COVID and nobody says a word. And they left behind wives, partners, children, grandchildren. So part of our conversations to our grandsons and our nieces and particularly our nephews, who's taking care of your kids when you go? Because you don't want to get a vaccine. What's their life going to look like? Being another black child raised with no daddy or no father figure. And so this Dr. Moore, she was a physician. She died of COVID. Why? Because she was telling the doctors one thing and they were listening to whatever they were listening to. How could you be a physician laying in a bed with COVID, knowing what they should be doing, and they're doing everything else but what you know they should do, and you end up deceased? Next slide. So speaking up means everything. So what this conversation really is about is, how do we reimagine our health as black folks? How do we come to terms with where we are? What changes can we make? And we all have our issues, me included. I'll tell you what it is later. Next slide. So this is just an overview. So this is basically, I'll make it simple, because the reading on it is a little difficult. Basically, what this says is that the leading causes of death to African Americans are decreasing. We are making progress. But what things are influencing, the rate in which it continues or declines even further, has to do with unemployment, has to do with poverty, has to do with pre-existing health conditions that we acquire through choices we make. Next slide. Health disparities. High blood pressure, diabetes, and stroke are the top 3 health disparities that we struggle with as a people. African Americans are more likely to die at an early age from all of those things. And it shows out nationally, not just South Carolina. It's across this country. I don't care what state you go to. We are what they call disproportionately overrepresented in certain health conditions. Next slide. Diabetes I'll make a special note about diabetes because it's very predictive of a couple of things. But the percentage of non-elderly, looking at health disparities, African Americans is the gold bar. The green bar is his Hispanic. So you'll notice that the yellow bar and the green bar are the two groups, except for the third category, which is, the first one says reported current that they had asthma. That's the first group. That's the first graph. Reported that they had asthma. The second bars, told by the doctor that they had diabetes. And then the third was told by the doctor that they had symptoms or they had some form of heart disease. So you'll see that, what do you find interesting about that slide based on the color? And I told you that African Americans were yellow, Hispanics were green. But in the two cases, Hispanics are overrepresented even more than us. Why do you think? How is that, you think? Tell me about the healthcare access thing. Tell me about that. They're less access than us? And what is the critical factor in why you think they have less access? Undocumented. Coming into this country with the laws that we have set up, and they're afraid of getting detained or ICE coming for them, so they don't seek health care. And unless they seek health care and their family seeks health care, or kids don't seek health care because their parents are undocumented, they aren't, but their parents are, so they don't go seek health care because it might backtrack to them through some other form. So you see the implications of not having access. We used to be way over them. Next slide. This is a picture, the lady with her hand to her face, Miss Wilhelmina. She's a lady that I met years ago. Her granddaughter contracted HIV from her mom, Tony. Tony is the lady laying in the bed. And for some reason, folks think that HIV has gone somewhere. It hasn't. And we don't hear about it anymore because people aren't dying like that anymore. But yet, in some counties, people are still dying like that. They're dying like that. Like Tony is, that's unheard of really now with medications that are out here, with treatment that's out here. No one should be dying like that. But I know people who have family members who have gone to their final days totally emaciated. Like you see there, like back in Africa, they used to talk how the cases used to be because they hid their disease. They contracted HIV and never told a soul. They never went to a doctor. They never got, they got tested and went into fear and fear of loss and just totally acted like they didn't have it. Next slide. So stigma is something we have to address. Next slide. So even among African Americans that we can confirm that have HIV, 86 received a diagnosis. So what they did was they looked at every 100 black folks. And out of 100 black folks, according to all of the stats that we've looked at, approximately 86 out of 100 people received a diagnosis. 63 received some care, 48 were retained, and 51 were virally suppressed. Let me tell you what that means in short. You can get tested, but if you get tested and you test positive for HIV, you got to get care. If you get care and you get on medicine, you got to go to the doctor. And you have to stay in the presence of a doctor because people don't have to die from HIV anymore. I know folks in their 80s and they getting it in. And they had an HIV diagnosis a long time ago, but they go to the doctor on a regular basis. They take their medicine as prescribed, you know, in the book of Sirach I was telling you about, and they live in active lives, cruising and flying here and going there, got wives, got husbands, have a life. So it is now, in the eyes of the government, they have it as a disability, but really it's not a disability if you're following protocol. So the key is, what I need you to look at is number 51. The 51 out of 100, that's a problem. Because we should have more people who are virally suppressed with HIV. If you're taking medicine for HIV, and if I say something you don't get, say, I didn't get that, repeat it. If you're taking medication or your grandchild's taking medication for HIV, the goal is to get them virally suppressed. You take them, just like your diabetes. If you take your diabetic medicine, it'll keep your sugar under control, right? When you take HIV medicine, it keeps the virus under control, so it's not producing. The more it's producing, the more it's turning into what they call AIDS. But people don't typically die from AIDS anymore. You know what they die from, people living with HIV? High blood pressure, heart disease, something else. But it's not the HIV, because if you take your medicine and you're virally suppressed, you can't transmit it. So when you hear people say U equals U or undetectable equals untransmittable, this is the rule. You take your medicine and you're virally suppressed, you're less likely to give it to another person. And then on top of that, we have something called PrEP. Now, raise your hand if you know what that is. P-R-E-P. If you ever heard of PrEP, raise your hand. This lies why I have to do what I have to do. Pre-exposure prophylaxis is another name for a pill. It's called Truvada. T-R-U-V-A-D-A, Truvada. Truvada is you heard about the blue pill? Man, you know what I'm talking about, the blue pill. Okay, I don't know what color Cialis is, but the other blue pill, this is the other one. It's called PrEP. That's the simple term for it. So when you drive by Comet, right, and you drive by one of them buses and you see that it says PrEP prevents HIV, did any of you see that? They're riding all over Columbia. And you can say, oh, that's what she was talking about. Next time you see a bus with Comet and it says PrEP prevents HIV, what they're talking about is what I'm telling you about, which is the other blue pill that if you take every single day, if you don't want HIV, then you're like 99 point something sure not to get it. Does that make sense? So then what question comes to your mind when I tell you about an innovation like PrEP, where you could take a pill a day and not get HIV? Say what? Does your insurance cover it? Usually, yes. What else you want to know about PrEP? Pardon? What are the side effects? Side effects? There's side effects in every diabetic medicine you take. There's some side effects with some hypertension medication. Your doctor got to change your meds. There's not a medication on the market. I don't care what you're taking it for. Neuropathy, something. They had to go through clinical trials, and they tell you, when they're talking to you real fast on the TV, and they say, you could get this and the other, and this and the other, and it's like a rap song. You say, Dad, do I really want to take that to fix that? Yeah, you sure do. Because we're not physicians. So our job is to say it's working or it's not working. Or the symptoms that I was feeling before I took the medication, right? I'm not having anymore. Or, yo, doc, I'm still having the same problem. That's not working. Get me off of it. So PrEP, one of the things you want to know about PrEP was who's a candidate for PrEP? Am I a candidate for PrEP? Should I be taking PrEP? Or should you be taking PrEP? I'm asking you.
I don't know.
You see what I'm saying? So the question for us is, how do I know? You could be a candidate, you may need PrEP, but you don't know you need PrEP. So how do you ask for something you don't know that you need? You didn't know. So see, we're making all these milestones today. The first thing is there's stuff out here that you don't even know about.
So what do you take PrEP for?
So you take PrEP to keep from getting HIV. It'll prevent you from acquiring or getting or contracting HIV. So for example, no, go ahead, ask me.
They have a dilemma not long ago about the old folks at home with all the people having HIV, a lot of them.
So first you have to address, in public health there's a theory. The theory is that what you think and what you believe dictates your behavior. I'm trying to make it real simple. They got a whole book on it, but I'm trying to break it down to the kindergarten version. What you believe and what you think, your attitude predicts your attitude. What you think about something predicts your attitude. Your attitude predicts how you behave. Does that make sense? It's like a formula. So if you think, for example, I'm not at risk for HIV. That's your belief. I don't believe I'm at risk. I'm married. I've been married for 39 years. Me and my man, we've been getting it in. He's my man. He's my only man. Or my wife, she's a good old soul. I love her to death. That's what the man was telling me one day, and he was telling me about how he loved his wife, and I was personally going through something myself, and he was like, oh, I love my wife, and she's this and that and the other, and I'm sitting up there in my head thinking, oh, what a man. That's so nice to have this man talk. And then he goes, and if I ever had an affair, I said, okay, out the door with that philosophy. My point being, yeah, what is my point? I got distracted. The point is that you got to know where you fit in. So if I was a woman who wanted a baby, and I knew my husband was positive, I married him or I'm with him and I know he's living with HIV. And despite the fact that you can't imagine anybody doing that, happens every day. Because we love who we love. And I want a baby, but I don't want HIV. I could take PrEP. If he's taking his medicine for his HIV and he's not transmitting it to me because he's virally suppressed, you got me? And I want a baby, I could take one pill a day and not contract HIV from him. If I was a person who accepted the fact that I was a sexually active person, that sometimes I had intimacy with people I didn't know their status before I was, who's checking? Are people really checking status? Are people really saying what you got? Are people really saying you got to go to the clinic with me and test before we think about what we going? That's not what people are doing. And so every person that we're with intimately, and by the way, everybody thinks old folks, I ask God every day, Lord, please let me be 80 and still can do something. I hope I got the energy at 85, And so we say, well, how do I get to that point? That's why I am on bioidentical hormone replacement therapy. Do you know what that is? Again, there's stuff out here. I tell black women all the time, there's stuff out here. You see sweating and going through all these changes. I'm having a moment. I say they got something for that. What's it called? I get pellets twice a year. They insert them in my butt. I'm just being frank. I mean, these are conversations we should have with each other. And they take my blood. They look. So when a woman goes through menopause, she's going through menopause because her estrogen, her testosterone, and women have testosterone, and her progesterone is depleting. And so she loses her hormone, and men do too. They go through menopause as well. Okay? And the lower your hormone levels go, the more you sweat, the more you have dryness, the more your hair starts falling out, the more things happen. Well, what bioidentical hormone replacement therapy does for me, my sister, my brother, and a number of friends of mine, is it brings your it doesn't take you back to being a teenager, okay? But what it does is it lifts up your hormones so that a lot of the things that you lost, you can revive. Does that make sense? So I'm a 15-year user of bioidentical hormones, and thank you, Lord, for that innovation through a doctor. Anyway, next slide. You can ask me later if you're interested in it. I can write it down for you, and I can make a referral to who you can go to. And guess what? It's for men and it's for women. It's just difficult because we resist, because of trust, remember? Because of the way we were taught you're not supposed to even read.
Before that, they had the pure estrogen that women and progesterone was going through the menopause that they could take.
Well, you have to watch your estrogen.
Yeah.
You have to watch taking too much estrogen. Estrogen is connected to cervical cancer. So, like if I go to my physician and my estrogen is too high compared to the other two, I take a progesterone supplement every night. Every night I take a pill. I keep them at my table. You have to modify your behavior and do triggers. That's my trigger. My trigger is that bottle of progesterone next to my bed. Every night I take it. Sometimes I relapse, but I get up the next morning, I take it. Yes.
You said that men go through menopause too.
Yes.
I never heard of that. And can you explain what is it near? Is it
So when I say menopause, I don't mean it in the traditional way of women, but men's hormones, their testosterone, for example, depletes. And in the depleting, their ability to get an erection, maintain erections, to have a full, testosterone is not just for sex, it's for energy. Women that are going through menopause get a lot of mid-body, what they call girth, that also impacts likelihood of heart disease. Because the more weight you carry in your stomach, the more likely or the more it places you at risk for cardiovascular. So men go through a stage of depletion of testosterone. So what they need is a re-up. They can get a re-up. Now some men use things like Cialis or use Truvada to stimulate that, but there's other things that you can talk to your physician about that are more natural-like. This is what I have, what people who are on bioidenticals, it's more slow releasing. So it's not some pill you take and boom. And I hear men talk about it and they joke about it. But really, it's important that we talk about it. That men, I'm still amazed at the number of men that are not getting their prostate checked. I have a very close friend who used to come see my husband, really my husband's friend. But throughout the year, he used to go to the bathroom all the time. And I could say, dog, he in here again? Because I'm in the house and they're out in the man cave, right? And my spirit kept pushing me and pushing me and pushing me. And one day he came in the house and I said, I don't want to get in your business. He said, I said, and you might perceive what I'm getting ready to say is like overstepping over my boundaries. But let me just say, you go to the bathroom a lot. And that's a sign that you might need to get your prostate checked. Do you know he took my advice to check it, and he ended up going into radiation therapy because in fact, that's exactly what it was. And he's doing fine now. But there's a lot of men who are either not going to get their prostate checked, they're ignoring, their wives are begging and pleading them, go check this, go check that, do this, do that, and they're resisting. And we ain't trying to be no widow. Now mind you, I'm trying to keep myself in shape, because if you don't have, I'm gonna got to be in some position where I can maybe get me another man. So I need you to do this, because that's not in my plan. I married you because I did not plan to have to look no more for no man. But, does that make sense? I'm saying, and you got to be the same way, because women are just as resistant. You men keep saying, oh, come on, babe, what's up tonight? You're like, leave me alone. Don't touch me. I mean, hey, at some point, people have issues with all of that. So the question I should have as a partner is, what do I need to do to stay as vital as I can for whoever it is, whether we're, you know what I'm saying. You get me. Yes, sir.
It's widespread that, if a man lives long enough, that he will end up with prostate cancer anyway. It's been a known fact that spread throughout a lot of men that the longer a man lives, if he lives long enough, a man will end up with prostate cancer anyway, because the prostate will never stop growing.
Well, I'm not sure I support that theory. I believe that prevention is everything. Black men should be getting checked because of the prevalence of prostate cancer in black men. They should be getting checked way earlier than what a lot of folks think. In their late 30s, early 40s, they should be getting checked. A lot of these young men today, because I don't know whether because they're smoking weed or whatever they're doing, or they're trying to, push the envelope. A lot of your grandsons and sons will have issues that you will never have, because their bodies are responding to all the things and the chemicals and the drugs and the whatever they're putting in their system. One of the things I do know is that men that are resistant to prostate concerns outside of prevention and detection is having an active sex life. They actually say that like doing it 27 times a month or something will keep you like straight. But but how do you do that if you don't have a partner? You know what I'm saying? So my point is that when a man has a fulfilling life in an intimate way, it does help prevent incidence of prostate cancer. But the other thing is eating right. A lot of stuff we eat propels us into these spaces. How we cook, what we're consuming, what we're not consuming. Yes.
This is good, and I really appreciate it. Nobody else does it, because a little bit of history about me, and I talked to the pastor about it. I'm one of them men who, former military, all the health care in the world, all around me. I didn't go to the doctor unless the bone was sticking out the skin.
And that is very...
It's stupid.
No. My dad used to say, we're products of our environment. We're products of our environment. The older folks used to say, who they people. who they people, because who their people are is predictive of what they think. So nothing's stupid. You can't label something as stupid if you never got told.
I feel that I was because of neglect. Just say I was neglectful. But what you're doing is important. Let me tell you why. When I was that way, for instance, if I caught a cold, and this is God's honor, if I caught a cold back when I was in the military, when I was in my 20s, I would go play basketball. I wouldn't go to the base hospital or the clinic to get aspirin or to get something.
And what age were you?
I was in my 20s.
Okay, and how old are you now, if I may ask?
57. The reason why I say that is I'm a Guillain-Barré syndrome survivor. you know, the people who are worried about taking it, and that little small 1% or whatever that actually gets a bad reaction, that's me.
And so you said a number of important things there. The first thing that comes to mind is, and again, maybe Pastor can get me straight, you know, the scripture that says that when I was a child, I acted like a child. Okay, I spoke as a child, acted like one, but now that I'm a man or woman, I do things different. So it's typical of our youth to think that we're going to live forever. But now that I'm older and I'm starting to feel the pain, I'm starting to see that things are changing, I'm more receptive to doing what I got to do to make sure that I live as long as He says 70, but hey, if I can get farther than that, that's the plan. And there's certain things we have to do. Vaccination is part of that. I cannot tell you for the 3 years that I worked in COVID at the beginning, and it was all virtual, and we were having these public sessions like what we're doing now. This is like my life. I mean, the fact that I can get in front of somebody and talk to them about health things is like major because we've been virtual for so long. And so I cannot tell you the different nationalities, from all white college groups to predominantly African-American pastors from different denominations. I just cannot tell you all the people that I interface with, including people of color who come from Africa and other places who have very clear stigmas and beliefs about things that I had to engage them in a conversation about why they were resistant to getting vaccinated. And why some people even now don't want to get their booster. And as a public health professional, I would suggest that if you have not had this last booster, that it's something that you really want to consider. Because what we know about the vaccines is they only last a certain time. Just like they give flu shot. They say get it every 12 months, right? Get it once a year. We're still studying COVID. But we do know that certain things exist and that the longevity of how effective they are, the whole purpose of the vaccine is to make your body think that it makes your body create antibodies or these protective cells that fight against COVID or fight against the stuff you already know about. Smallpox, diphtheria. You went to school, you marched your little self to school, they put you in a line, they gave you those vaccines, your mama, your daddy didn't think twice. Now all of a sudden, it's COVID, and we totally went brain dead about the fact that we've been dealing with vaccinations and vaccines since we came into this earth, thank God, or we would be a disease-ridden country. We already are, but I'm saying we have all this innovation, all these medical things that are available to us, but we're either unaware of them, and when they're brought to our attention, we overlook them. So part of this whole conversation is how do we change and reimagine our health where we say to ourselves, I'm going to be a little more open. I'm going to ask more questions. I'm going to be more open. So to that end, I can simply say that African American women, breast cancer, we get it about the same rate as white women. It's that we die more frequently for breast cancer. Late diagnosis, and quality of care. Not getting mammograms, that's the prevention. But once we get diagnosed, once we see a lump, or feeling a lump and going into avoidance. Feeling a lump and not going to the doctor, say, I think it's a lump, I need you to check it.
Fourth one, my doctor said, you don't need
And that's part of the conversation we're having about being passive. But guess what? A lot of women don't have, they're so busy worrying about their children that they're not taking care of themselves. They put everybody's health over their own.
Always have.
Always have and need to stop.
Yep.
Just like I told my daughter, you know, when I married my husband, who's now 28 years, she was a teenager. She was a piece of work. And now she's a clinical social worker getting ready to move to Wisconsin with my grandson. He's like, when I leave you, he says, I'm going to be homesick. I said, yeah, stop talking about it because I'm going to start crying. He says, yeah, you're going to be chase sick. You're going to be chase sick, ain't you, grandmama, because I'm not here every day. He here every day, burning up stuff on my stove every day. I said, I know I'm going to miss that, right? I said, besides, don't come over here tonight because I got plans with your grandpa. Oh, yeah, I don't need to have that information. Well, I'm telling you, don't come over here tonight because I got plans with your grandpa. Anyway, next slide. Anyway, so I know time is limited. So you say, you know, we always playing these games with kids. Yeah. Acting like we don't know nothing about nothing. Acting like we don't, they know it's a lie. They know we lying. You know, and when we start preaching and trying to act holier than thou, I ask them 6 questions. And I've asked these same questions to thousands of people. And I usually ask them to write it down. I'll give them a piece of paper, and I'll say, write the answers down to these questions and mind your business and keep your eyes off of everybody else's paper. And I have asked this thousands of times, and it stands up every single time. 1, not including a time when you were forced, may have been forced, or it was coerced, somebody tricked you, or some adult took advantage of you and talked you into or violated you where you were forced to have sex without your permission, not including that. How old were you the first time? You could think about the answers. I ain't gonna ask you to write it down. How old were you the very first time you chose to have sex of your own free will? That's the first question. Think about it. I know somebody, you got to go way back in time, but you know, you can remember, you know what the first time was. 2, where were you? Who were you with? Okay, who were you with? Number 4, were you married or single? And engaged don't count. So you can't say, well, we were fitting to get married. No, you were either married or you were single, since we go in black and white. You either were married or you were single. Number 5, did you use any form of protection? I don't know who that is, and I'm not interested. Did you use any form of protection the first time? If you did, what was it? And then the last question is, I don't know what this is. I'm sorry. I thought I cut that off. The last question was, what could anybody have said to you at that time and place to make you say no? Okay, those are the questions. And this is what I know. This is what I've asked thousands of people. This is what I found out. The first time most people had their first sexual intercourse, they were teenagers. Depending on the sex, male or female, determine how early that age was. Usually for males, it's much earlier. But they were still teenagers, male or female. Where they were, I hear all kinds of places about where they were the first time. If the older they are, the more they're likely to say in the barn, in the bushes, you know, in the car, you know, someplace like that. And the younger they are, they say like at the hotel room, or they say the boys' house. So while y'all patrolling the girls and worrying about the girls' virginity, you need to check them dudes, because that's where they take them, to the dude's house, because you're not watching him, you're just watching her. So that's frequently reported. Who they were with, God knows who. Were they married or single? Most people say they were single and not engaged. Most say didn't use any form of protection against STDs or pregnancy. And if they do report it, they say a pill or they say a condom. The older they are, they say a condom. But now we don't want to talk about condoms. We don't have condoms in the house. We don't give condoms. We don't want to talk about it. We don't want them in our church. At a part of a health fair, don't bring no condoms. But truth is, my daddy, when he was in the military, that's all you got. Some condoms and go, you on leave for this weekend. But now we don't talk about it anymore. And then finally, you say, well, what could anybody have said to you at that time and place with that person to make you just say no? And most people say nothing. Nothing was going to stop me. I had made up my mind. I was going to do it. I loved him. I loved her. We was going to express our emotions and tell each other how much we love each other, and we did it. So, what are we doing now in 2023? Telling our kids, wait till you get married. Abstain till you get married. We didn't do it. Didn't work for us, all the church going and all of that. I mean, I'm not saying I don't believe in setting a standard, but let's set standards that people will actually follow. And let's talk to our children. We have Bibles in our house, but no book on reproductive health. No book on sexual human growth and development. No source that they can go to and read up on. Instead of going and buy them $200 sneakers, go buy them a book. Do you know why your period comes on? Do you know how you had a wet dream? Do you know why you have an erection? You don't know that? Here's a book. So I'm saying, as black folks, we got to expand our repertoire and come up to speed with truth. So, do you have any questions about COVID? I know I got an agenda, but since I know time is limited, did you have any questions? Because one of the things that's really concerning us right now is people who had COVID and now are suffering the after effects. So COVID is not something you just get and it goes away.
So what is the fatigue?
Can you flip forward some? I have a slide to hit Pastor's question. Keep going. Oh, mental illness is a whole nother issue with our young people. Keep flipping. Stop. Let me just make a note there so I can, and I'll address Pastor's question. When we know that there's something going on at a family member, we got to address it. We got to get help for them when their mental health is clearly in jeopardy and we see it. I cannot tell you how many people, I literally sat there with someone yesterday telling me the symptomology of one of their family members, and I just looked at her, and I was like, what are y'all gonna do? Who's gonna make a call? Who's gonna go get some help for this dude? And she was talking about it like it was a formality, but to me, as from a public health perspective, this young man is clearly on the pathway to either getting killed or getting incarcerated or some worse after effect because he has a mental health issue and nobody in the family wants to dive in and deal with it. Yes, ma'am.
You just said the word. None of them wants to deal with the problem. No one wants to deal with the problem. Most times, if you look about yourself and you look around at African Americans, we are the ones that really are very, very quiet about if we have a child or if we live long enough and we have our uncle that know that they have a mental problem. We don't even discuss it. You just say, oh, he'll be all right. Oh, she'll be all right.
Or they have an alcohol dependency, yes. And we see them going down, drinking more, being more reclusive, acting out, and we don't require. But to your point, we have the ability to reimagine and take control of our community. We just have to do it one person at a time.
That's how, you're right, just one person.
One person.
And once we've learned that, let's put it out, to me, I put it like this. Once I start, then we can start
And that's exactly what I was going to say. It's a I. I'm going to say something. I'm going to make a call. I'm going to do something. Yes.
I know from years back, I worked as a youth counselor with Willow Gray Opportunity School, and addressing mental health, to me, it was just something black people just don't listen to. I don't care how you talk with them or all the symptoms you might observe, and you might talk, they seem to just roll over it. It's as if it doesn't exist and I don't want to hear it. You know, this is not something that happens to black people. Black people don't have mental illnesses, and I don't understand out of all the years, how do you get them to realize that, you know, we do have a problem with mental health. You do need to listen, and sometimes you need to read too upon these things so you can recognize it. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that they don't know anything about it. They don't try to learn anything about it. So I'm wondering, what is it? After all these years, I still have not found where.
Well, there's no easy answer to what you're addressing, and it's multifaceted, because sometimes if for example, we know that most health concerns are not the result of behavior or choices in behavior. It has more to do with socioeconomic factors, our environment, pressures people are under. Some of the things like we talked about poverty, some of the things of not having access to early intervention. A lot of people know they have an issue, but when it was first started, they either couldn't afford the help, and then it went on and on and on, and no one interceded. So it's a mentality that we have to adopt as a community to be first, as you've said, first say I. There by the grace, there go I am going to say something, even when I know the whole darn family ain't saying nothing.
But some people, some families, unfortunately, they deny it because, oh no, that's something that we don't get. That's what crazy people. They said it's crazy. It's not crazy. I'm from New York, Queens, New York. We had one group of people, Jamaica Alliance for the Mentally Ill.
They can't hear you.
We had one group of people, which were called Jamaica Alliance for Mentally Ill. That was the only, oh no, that's, if you were perceived to be crazy, as they say, wasn't crazy, with mental illness, black people know, white people get it as well. All people, it's not a question of black, white, Hispanic, Asian, everybody, but everybody doesn't want to admit it,
I have one other thing.
unfortunately.
One other thing about the whole, we're talking about it. A lot of times people are just too embarrassed or ashamed to admit that something is wrong with child, aunt, mom, whomever it is. They are embarrassed also. So I feel like we have quite a few factors that we have to look into. And as she was saying, we have to study them, read about it, as you said.
Well, but also what you're doing right now, what we're doing right now, which is through the leadership of your church, and that's important. When you have leaders who are visionary, when you have leaders who are proactive, when they are willing to sacrifice a few minutes of time to bring parishioners or bring their sheep, if you will, into a space and allow them an opportunity to have this conversation, you can't leave the same. There's something that you may hear, there's something that you know is going on in your own family that you might start processing more about what is it I need to do to try to address this issue versus going along to get along and going along with the family. They're not saying nothing, so I'm not going to say nothing. I'm just going to let it happen. When you start saying this is not right, you know, in my former relationship, my ex-husband had a brother who had a cocaine psychosis, and it was severe. And he was wreaking havoc in the house with my mother-in-law. He was drilling holes in doors, like where the vestibule is. He had drilled a hole through the top of the door, ran a chain through it so that he could keep people out when he was in the room, and he would only like come out at night. And when I would go visit her, I had to make a decision. I had to say to my husband, ex-husband, what is it that this man has to do before you come to terms with what's happening here? Now, somebody needs to make a call, and it's clear that that's not happening, so I tell you what, I'm not coming down here anymore. I'm not bringing my daughter down here with Joey walking around at night. I don't know what he's going to do, and I'm not taking the chance. To love my grandson dearly. Grandson, love you, but you and your fiance don't want to get vaccinated. Guess what? You can't come over here. I love you, but you got 2 kids, and if you're not willing to protect them against COVID, I know you're not thinking about me. So when you decide to go get vaccinated and send me the proof via text, bring it hard copy. I don't care how you do it, but you can't come over here because I don't know who you're with. And that's what the kind of hard lines we as black folks don't want to take. But we got to reimagine how your behavior impacts my health or how my decisions are impacting my community. So when we say herd community, when we talk about herd, creating a herd, and they say the reason why we need people vaccinated and boosted is because we look at it like this. You know, think of a herd of cows, right? You got black cows, visualize this. You got a whole bunch of black cows, you got some red cows. With COVID, the whole purpose of vaccinations is to create a whole bunch of black cows. Because if you have a few red cows among the black cows, then you have a herd immunity. Because you got more folks who are vaccinated than them few folks walking around red who are unvaccinated. So even if you get it from one of the red cows, the vaccinations protect you from dying. We never told you the vaccinations keep you from getting COVID. What we said was if your immune system is bolstered, then you reduce the likelihood that thing will grab your respiratory system and take you out. And as a closure note, because I want to get to Pastor's question. We did a session the other day with a woman. You notice we're 1, 2, 3, 4th in line for having health insurance. Again, Medicaid expansion. So when you think about the I, think about who is your state representative? Who is your state representative? Who is your representative? This is just a question because I don't want to embarrass nobody. If I ask you to tell me the name of the person that sits in the House of Representatives that's in your district that represents you at the State House, could you tell me their name? If I ask you who is the senator that represents you, now I could show you just by standing up and sitting down. Who is the name of your senator? Could you tell me? If they see you on the street, would they say, hey, how you doing, miss? What's your name?
Flores.
Miss Flores?
Glimp.
Glimp? Miss Glimp. How you doing, Miss Glimp? How do they know Miss Glimp? They know Miss Glimp because Miss Glimp done seen them at a meeting. Miss Glimp done called them. Miss Glimp done gone down there and say, what's going on with down here at this community? Because see, you do have the right to speak to these people. You do have them up there making decisions about your life. But what I find is that when we talk about access, we don't use our access. We got folks sitting up there making decisions and we don't even know their name. But we voted for them because we said, who you going to vote for, girl? No. Why are you voting for this person? What I've realized is that most of us don't know who represents us. We have no relationship with them. And Joe Neal, Representative Joe Neal, who was a mentor to me, taught me one thing. If they're not doing nothing for you, you don't have a relationship. If they're not doing anything for your community, we need to ask, why are you not doing that? What are you doing up there? We have these issues in our community. What are you doing about it? And maybe we need to reevaluate why we keep going in that booth. Like this week, I've already voted. Oh, and by the way, you know there's 2 amendments on there. Did you know that? Okay. And you know why I decided how to vote on those 2 amendments? I called my senator. I said, there's 2 amendments that I know are going to be, but I'm not quite sure why I would say yes or no. And he told me why. And I knew to vote yes. Because if we get a recession, we're going to need some money. I'm not telling you how to vote, I'm just saying. Can you flip forward? Flip again. Flip. 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 That's hospitalizations. Flip. I'm trying to get to I'll come back to that. Now flip. 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 Keep going. I'm not doing none of that. Keep going. I changed my mind. No. No. You can keep going. There is a difference between those 2 viruses, but I'm not going to get into that. Keep going. We'll come back. I'll come back for part 2. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. We're almost there. Okay, right there. Right there. So you were talking about long-term impact. These are
Particularly, what do you call it, fatigue.
fatigue. So, persons that are experiencing continued fatigue, I mean, clearly it's a conversation that needs to occur it is a aftermath of for some, COVID exposure that was difficult, especially if it was difficult, because again, the difference between HIV and COVID is that COVID impacts the respiratory system. That's its target. It's looking for you. So what? If our breathing is impaired, then we're going to be more tired than we typically would, because that's how we bring in oxygen into the system. So if we haven't, my sister had COVID before they even had a name for it. This was, I think she contracted it in 1999. It didn't manifest till January of 2020. That's when they started they gave it a name. SARS-CoV-2, but they ended up calling it COVID-19, which was the date But she got it, I think, at the end of 19, and her son had to literally carry her into a hospital because her doctor kept telling her she had a bad flu. She's a Peloton chick. You know them bikes? I mean, she go to gym every day, making me sick. But anyhow, 60 years old, top physical health. But even now, she says, with all her going to the gym every day, she still doesn't feel how she felt before she had COVID. And she got COVID twice after that. Each time minimized because she got vaccinated. But the first time she got it, she didn't even know what it was. And there was no vaccine. Remember, we didn't come up with a vaccine till way into 20. And then when we got a vaccine, people were fighting it. So, and still don't want to get boosted. Still fighting it. But to your question, the whole thing is, how do I rebuild or reconstruct my respiratory system to try to combat the level of fatigue that I feel? And that's a conversation with a doctor. That's a conversation where if there's a test to look at lung capacity, that would be warranted with someone who's feeling like they're not catching their breath the way they used to, and it's impacting their level of energy. Sometimes it might require some boosting of the immune system through diet or through some supplement. I think, again, it's a conversation with a physician, a holistic physician, someone who's just not stuck on giving you medicine. What things can I use? Or maybe go to a health food store and say, I'm really trying to boost up my immunity, and because sometimes it might not be the COVID, it might be something else that needs. So for example, if you're not taking a vitamin D supplement, D3, 10,000 IUs every other day, that protects you against colds and flus and strengthens your bones so you don't get osteoporosis. You could, magnesium supplements, you could get them in powder, you could put them in water. They help you eliminate waste. Sometimes we're filled full of you know what. I can't say it in here, but sometimes you're just full of it. And you need to flush out, clean out, go get, not a colonoscopy, but get a colon cleanse, just start reducing sugar intake. You know, alcohol probably isn't an issue, right? You know, but all of those things cooperate into how we feel and whether fatigue. And then sometimes you got to get rid of people and things that are getting on your last nerve. Because a lot of fatigue and a lot of stress can make you think that it's your body, but it's really your mind. And sometimes you have to just say, no, I'm not doing that. Why? Because I don't want to. And I don't have to explain it. I'm just not doing it. And I feel okay about it.
Dr. Gaddis is pretty upfront and pretty quick to cut you off when you're going the wrong way. I was pretty certain, I think the church knows that finally COVID-19 showed up at my house. I was pretty comfortable. My symptoms started on Saturday. It was confirmed that I did have it by going to urgent care. The doctor there said, you probably contracted it 4 to 6 days before your symptoms.
That's right.
So I was pretty comfortable that it didn't happen here, but that was Saturday. But then I started suggesting to her where I thought I got it. That's where she cut me off. So.
Me?
Yes.
You know why?
She said, you don't know where you got it from.
It don't matter.
So don't even go down there.
It don't matter.
You don't know where you got it from.
It doesn't matter where you got it. It's just like anything else. It don't matter where you got it. The question is what you gonna do. Because see, that's the guilt. That's the stuff that we ponder on that distracts us from moving forward.
But you take certain precautions to stay away, to avoid it.
Uh-huh.
What? I didn't hear you. What did you say about it?
You take certain precautions.
And what are those precautions? As it relates to this topic, what have they suggested are the measures that we should have and should continue based on the situation, use?
Well, one, I don't like crowds. I don't like crowds of people around me. That's the only thing I can, say. But to say that you can be around a crowd of people and still catch it, so it's not.
Or you can be in there with your granddaughter, great-granddaughter, and she not feeling good, and I get her in my bed, and I'm hugging her, and I'm come to grandma, and blah, blah, blah. Next thing I know, I got the COVID. That's what happened to me. And so it's not always about a big crowd. It could be a small family gathering, somebody, some teenager, some older person who cares where they got it, brought it to you, and you having lunch and whatever, and next thing you know, you sniffling. So that's a deterrent. The issue is you got diagnosed, said, well, where'd I get it? This isn't an STD. So let me be clear. COVID is not a sexually transmitted infection. And I brought y'all a handout just so you could take it with you and read it, just so in case, since the monkeypox, I had some people ask me, so I brought you a handout on monkeypox because people have all these questions. And I don't have time to deal with it today. Yeah, that's part 9. But that's not a sexually transmitted infection either. Monkeypox is a bacteria that you can get, but you get it from contact. You get it from touching somebody. You get it from laying in their sheets and they had a lesion and it secreted on the sheets, and then a kid comes in, gets in the bed, they could get it. Does that make sense? But the way it was presented to the community, they said you only can get it if you're a gay man. So everybody said, well, whoa. Like they said, oh, we got another HIV thing. Oh, we got another reason to say gay people got, something wrong with gay people because, here they come with the monkeypox now. Just looking for fingers to point and say, oh, well, that's not me. I'm not a risk for that. That's those people. So those of us who worked in public health said, why did you present it like this? Why did you not present it as a contact infection that can be transmitted from person to person regardless of age, race, da-da-da-da-da. And if you want to say that there are certain communities that we're seeing it more in, then say that if you have to. But as the fact sheet says, it's a tactile kind of thing. But to your question and to your concern or to your point, my first statement is, it don't matter where it came from. You got it. Isolate. Don't be going out to church when you know you're not feeling well. Stay home, get online. That's why they spend all this money being virtual, so you can have the opportunity. And I'm going to tell you, COVID helped me. My relationship with my husband was intensified, because I know you ain't going nowhere. So we had a chance to really, revitalize our relationship. Now, for some people, it was hell. Let me just be frank. They said, I don't even like you no more. And I got to be with you every single day. You can't go golfing. You can't go anywhere. Go to your basement. So COVID was good in some ways, and it's been horrible, especially for those of us that have lost someone. But at the end of the day, we now have a vaccine. And I would ask each of you to reevaluate, if not for you, your families. Yes.
Is cardiovascular condition one condition?
Ask me again.
You see cardiovascular.
Talk in the mic because they can't.
I'm sorry. Cardiovascular.
Yes.
One of the,
So you see the heart palpitations and chest pain?
right.
Remember, the heart is connected to the lungs.
Right. What if you have that? I already have atrial fibrillation.
Well, see, I'm going to put it in this context. Pre-existing conditions. When they said people with pre-existing conditions should really, really consider vaccinations, they mean that. COVID took more people with diabetes than I can tell you, that had the pre-existing condition of diabetes, diabetics, and before the cure, before the vaccine, Oh my God, we lost so many black folks because they already had diabetes. And then here comes this infection, and it grasped their respiratory system, and it just totally took them out. So if you have diabetes, if you have a pre-existing cardiovascular issue, if you, remember I said asthma? I showed you that slide where it said the number of African Americans who struggle with asthma. If you've already been told by your doctor that you have either asthmatic trait or they recommend some prophylaxis to you because of an asthmatic or respiratory issue, the last thing you want is COVID. Vaccinated or not vaccinated, but certainly not unvaccinated and unboosted.
I know you didn't really hit upon this, but in my reading, I came across an article this week in the USA Today that stated young people in their 20s and 30 are having strokes at an enormously high rate, and alcohol is supposedly the cause of that. And I wondered if you had any information on that, because I do know of a young lady that's in her 20s, and I think she's a little overweight, but she drinks what I consider more than a 20-year-old, a 20-something-year-old. I'm not sure how far she's
So there's two risk factors.
Yeah, she's a little overweight.
Well, little is relative.
Well, I don't.
No, I'm edifying what you're saying. I'm saying that you'll notice when they talk about vaccinations, obesity or overweight is part of the pre-existing conditions. So if it's obesity, diabetes, and something else, or if it's diabetes alone or obesity alone, you know, and so I'll speak to first that part. You know, I went to see Minister Farrakhan. My husband was telling some jokes somewhere and won 2 tickets to see Farrakhan when he came here, right? And one of the things I never forgot that he said, and he was talking to black women, although I think it's pertinent to black men as well. He said, black women are digging a grave with their teeth. He said that black women are digging a grave with their teeth. That what we're putting in our bodies is not only lending itself to overweight, but also to internal malfunction because we're eating our misery. Okay? So again, if someone is overweight, whether it's a little overweight, but certainly if it's classified as obesity, they are at much higher risk for having a severe impact if they get COVID. Does that make sense what I'm saying? If they get COVID, the impact it will have on their ability to recuperate is significantly less than someone who's not obese or a little overweight. To the drinking. Have you not noticed that every generation is dying sooner than the generation before them? And it's alcohol. You don't talk much about the racial breakdown of that article you saw, because that was something that I would want to know. Were they talking about predominantly white children?
No, but that was in the article, and I'm not sure exactly what the ratio was or is, but it was in the USA Today this week.
But it's significant, what you're saying.
Yeah.
But what it speaks to is a couple of things, and I'll be brief. Number one, people lie about their behavior. So if a kid's drinking or they're experimenting, they're not going to tell you. Just like you didn't tell your parents if you snuck a nip. The question is how often in public health we talk about frequency and duration. How often do you do it? And how long do you do it? Over what period of time do you do it? So as individuals, if we're doing whatever it is, if we're doing it a lot, you remember you said, and for the person you're thinking about, they do it a little more than you think they should be for their age. I can't say what that is, but what I can say is that every one of us have issues, whether it's eating too much sweets or smoking cigarettes or drinking drinks or whatever it is. Every one of us, there by the grace of God, go on. It's for each of us to decide, what is our thing? What is that one thing I want to work on? Pick one thing. Just one thing you want to change. And devote, so let me be personal. I was a constant exerciser. My daughter is a Peloton chick. She's a nationally certified spin instructor. She works out every day. She is in tip-top shape. That used to be me. But somewhere along the line, I regressed. And I need to get back on it. And that is what I'm pushing myself to do. That's the one thing I got to do, because I feel great. And I imagine if I would get in the gym and start working, pumping some iron. I mean, I feel a few things. I've had a knee replacement, but it ain't impacted nothing major. You know, I've had partial hysterectomy. I ain't having no more babies. You know, my thing is we each have our own little medical things that we had going on, but we moved past it. So to that young lady, if she's close to you.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. How do I approach the situation? Do I go through another family member? Or do I say something myself?
The Bible tells us to go to the person first. The Bible tells us that we should, in public health, we call it self-talk. Like my first boyfriend, I wasn't a big dater. I could count on one hand probably how many men I ever dated in my whole life, although because of the work I do and the way that I am, people think, oh yeah, she was fast. No, I wasn't. I've been married 13 years to one man and 28 to another. I know about marriage. So my point is that if you have an issue, it's always better when you have enough respect for that person to go to them directly. Now, what you have to do is practice what you're going to say and how you're going to say it. So, for example, in this case, we always start with strength-based. Now, you ain't doing this and you ain't doing that, and you need to stop doing this and you need to stop doing that because you know what's going to happen. They're going to shut you off. You could close the conversation and they won't get in an engagement again. But when we say things like, I love you, and I'm concerned about some things that I'm seeing. And I don't know, and I don't want you to think I'm overstepping, but the only reason I'm coming to you is because I really care about you and your life. And I'm seeing some things that I just, my spirit keep telling me to say something to you about, and I gotta say it. And I hope you'll receive it in the spirit in which I'm putting it to you. It was no different. I mean, I went through months before I approached that man about his prostate. I literally would sit on the couch and go through dissonance. Dissonance is a feeling you get when you know you need to take an action, but you're not taking it and you're struggling. It's called dissonance. Look it up. So you're in dissonance right now. You know you need to say something. You know you want to say something, but for whatever reason, that's what you have to deal with first. What are your reasons for not approaching her? What's the worst that could happen is a question we have to always ask ourselves. So if they get pissed off, if they get mad, if they start screaming and hollering, that doesn't mean you got to scream and holler. Let them go off on a tangent, but stick to your point. I'm saying this to you because I care about you. I care about your life. I see you drink. How often do you drink? Because from my observation, you drink every single day. From everything that I've read about and learned, that's the beginning of an issue. Is there something I can help you with? Are you under stress? Is there something going on with you where you feel like you need that to help you? If I can help you, how can I help you? And that's the kind of, and you can start that way. It doesn't mean it'll end that way. You could start with the best of intentions and approach people on issues, and they turn it into a fiasco if you allow it. But that's when you call on God. That's when you walk into that discussion with God at your side, and that's when you have to call on him to say, don't allow me, give me the patience to keep me from getting distracted. Because let me tell you, when you address people's behavior, things that they're doing that is impacting them directly or you, it's human nature. Their whole objective is to get you off their back. Their whole objective is to say whatever they can say to tick you off so you'll start screaming and hollering, and then they can walk away and you won't bring it up no more because you don't want to go through it. And that's just human nature. So it's not just your kids or just your husband or just your wife or just your whoever. All of us are the same way. So, we're about at close. I say that because I know y'all got stuff to do. So I want to be respectful of that. Are there any things, one day Pastor will invite me back and you could bring some young people in here and I can kick y'all out. And have a good old talk, But I'm going to give you my phone number. Oh, first of all, let me give you this monkeypox handout, just in case you just say, oh, yeah. Now, let me just give you a disclaimer. It's called Social Gatherings, Safer Sex, and Monkeypox. So, just so you know what you're getting.
I think what Dr. Gaddis, I know what she said up front was that this is not just for you, this is for your children, this is for your grandchildren, this is information. We used to hear them say in training classes, each one, teach one. So get good information, get it inspired, and then you can go back and talk to other people. People that's in your life. Y'all know one in my life that we go back and forth about the vaccination. He thinks he's young and healthy and don't need it. Well, maybe his dad needs him to have it so that he don't bring anything home to his daddy. So, but that's information for us to have. And I think it would be good, you all tell me what you think, that if Dr. Gaddis could come on a regular basis, at least for a little while, periodically, have a session with us, then we, having been part of this and seeing the value
Taking y'all's picture.
and we can get other people here and other people involved, as well as our partner churches that are around in this area. What do we think?
I'm taking you all's picture.
Amen.
Oh,
Yeah.
my car, I need to get COVID tests. You can? Oh, let me give you my keys. I want to also give you my phone number. If you have a pen and you care to write it down, what I do? If you have a question, oh, here we go. There's a red.
Come on, Ron, go with it.
There's a red SUV, Lexus outside. In the back seat, there's a box. 803. I have one. 309. 63. Oh, yeah, I'll write it down for you. As long as I've had the opportunity to do this community work, my husband says, why are you at that computer going through all that? You could just go in there and just talk off the top of your head. I was like, no, I cannot. I have to make sure I have my agenda straight, right? So, this is my passion, being able to meet with you all and just do community work, because at the end of the day, I know. Oh, I'm sorry. It's 803-309-6300. 6340. And matter of fact, if you go to the last slide, you could just flip to the last slide. We're working on HIV vaccine, but we are way far away from that. That's not the last slide, is it? The last slide has my name and email on it. Don't worry about it. I'm going to write it. It's DR like doctor, Bambi, B-A-M-B-I like the cartoon, and that's the deer, not the elephant. That's Dumbo. Just saying. Dr. Bambi Gaddis, that's G-A, 2 D's, I-S-T, 0923 at Gmail. You're welcome. These kits, you can just come up and get them as you depart. These kits have 2 specimens per box, and it has the instructions. They're fairly easy to use. They're good to have around the house just in case you think something's going on or somebody coming. Go take a COVID test. Take the COVID test, wait outside for 15 minutes, and then we can have a conversation. And I have been known to do that too. Oh, I have some right there. So if there is no more questions or concerns, I appreciate you all inviting me.
Any closing words
On the flu, get a flu shot. Ma'am? Yeah. If you have not, they're anticipating this winter. They've already been telling us about this respiratory issue that's going on with children. The level of people, black folks who are not vaccinating their children is not good. We have to vaccinate those children. If they're, especially, now if they stay home with you every day, that might be one thing, but if they go into a daycare, if they're going to school and they're interfacing with their classmates who come from all kinds of environments, and I keep hearing one, my grandson's fiance said that one little girl, one young man who goes to my great-granddaughter's daycare, the daycare person just told the parent, don't bring them back anymore because they kept bringing the child back sick. And the child was passing stuff on to other kids. So as grandparents and great-grandparents, encourage your children to get your grandchildren vaccinated. Health Force, we've been working with Health Force to go into communities. We did something at Gable Oaks Apartments. We go to different, communities. That project's going to end in December. That's a concern for me. What was allowing us to go into the community through the resources. So I don't know. We'll figure it out. But, you got to do what you got to do. But if you haven't been vaccinated, please do. Oh, yeah. Oops, there it is. Yeah. Yeah.
The best thing you talked about was herd immunity. Because there's so many people. I work at I'm retired, but I work at the Boys and Girls Club. And it's just so many kids come through there, sick every day. And I'm boosted up. Every booster they gave me, I'm trying to get every one. But the mentality of people, I know my son, when it first came out, my son said, well, Dad, man, I don't know what's in it. I said, they told you what's in there, you still wouldn't know. And that's their mentality, you had, the naysayers put so much propaganda out there.
But to your son's defense, what's the problem that we have is that opportunities like this are not prevalent enough, where people can ask questions. So your son looks at TV, or he looks at TikTok, or he looks at whatever, he gets a message, but he has no one to ask for clarity. And so then they don't have a source of credibility that they feel they can ask to get the right information. So they just summarily listen to it. So what we have to do is direct them, which is why I gave you my number, redirect them to a source and say, let me call this person and ask them your questions. Because sometimes you just have to say, ask me what you want to ask me. You know, so I can dispel mythology. No, they didn't inject you with COVID. The vaccines are not made of COVID. They're replicas. It's just like, a bike. If I showed you a bike handle, and I showed you a tire, and I showed you a chain for a bike, you'd look at those three things, you say, oh, that's to a bike. Because there's pieces of it that you recognize, right? So that's what they did with the vaccine. They took replicas of SARS-CoV-2 and created a vaccine so that the body thinks that COVID's in your system. And then what happens when the body thinks COVID's in your system? What does it do to respond? It responds by creating antibodies that repel it. So they don't inject you with SARS-CoV-2. But we had to explain that to people, that it's a imitation of COVID that they use in the vaccine, what they call mRNA. And in closure, the reason why we haven't come up with an HIV vaccine yet, we can prevent acquisition through what's it called? What's it called?
PrEP.
Say the word? PrEP. Yeah, sometimes you have to say it. PrEP. Say the word, PrEP. You'll see it on the bus. Look for it on the bus. Pre-exposure prophylaxis or Truvada is the... So we got PrEP, and we have great medications to reduce, so people can be what? Virally suppressed. But we want to come to a day when we have a vaccine where somebody could get vaccinated, like against smallpox or whatever, and you may not get it at all and won't have to take a pill. But we're having difficulty coming up with a formula. Unlike COVID, which, by the way, they've been working on COVID for years before. They just, if President Trump didn't do anything good, he gave him some money to getting with the research.
But that was after he got pressured, because Obama said it. Obama had started already researching it.
There you go, talking rational. Well, the reality was President Obama was gone, and we got left with what we got left. And thank God he was pressured or embarrassed, because he was going to have y'all drinking bleach. Anyway, whatever reason he did it, he pumped so much money into it. But on another hand, in a sidebar, a whole lot of folks going to jail over that money. You know, all that COVID relief. Oh, they had businesses, making up businesses they know they didn't have. And that. So there's implications for all of these health issues. So, any rate, take what you want. You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Thank you. After 2 weeks, we're going to reschedule our schedule again. Dr. Family, when she thinks will be an appropriate time. And so,
I'll give.
That we want her back. I said, that we want her back.
So what you, so